I'd like to welcome you to the Game Changers with Fabian Lyons show here on YouTube Live, and we're real excited about our next guest. He is Mark Phi. He is doing some absolutely great work in the art world, specifically for Bob Marley. Now we are 2 days away, so we think that Mark's appearance tonight is very timely. So, Mark, welcome to the Game Changers show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Fabian. Appreciate it. Look forward to our conversation, and excited about this movie coming up in the next couple of days.
Yes.
Look forward to it.
Yes, no doubt. A lot of buzz around this biopic. It has taken a long time, but it has been worth the wait. And Mark, your journey from fledgling artist at a sip and paint in Boca Raton, I believe, in 2013, and we've been at these sip and paints, and there's always a couple of people there that stand out. They're not just scratching around. You're like, hey, that's not bad. Maybe you should try this.
Right.
But somebody actually said that to you, encouraged you, and and we're here right now.
Yeah, so literally, it was very by chance. I was going out to celebrate a friend's birthday and decided to do a sip and paint event. I'd never done anything like that before. I never painted before in my life before that point. And the teacher looked at the work that I did. I did a lion, was the first thing because I'm a Leo.
Right.
And the teacher said, this is everybody in the class kind of thought I painted before, but I only followed the instructions. And so they told me I should do something with it, and I did. So followed up a year later and did a whole bunch of Bob Marley paintings, and the rest is kind of history after that.
Right. And what a history it is, Mark. You have your own wing at the Bob Marley Museum in Kingston, which really speaks for itself, where your art is being permanently displayed there. You have a piece that is making the rounds around the world, actually, in the Bob Marley One Love Experience. And you were commissioned by Paramount Picture and TikTok for a separate piece. So it's good to be Mark Phi right now in terms of the art world, isn't it?
Well, yeah, but I really want to draw attention. This is really I'm a real Bob Marley fan, and this goes back even before I started, painting. Talking the first piece of art I ever purchased ever in life back in like 2000 was a sketch of Bob Marley, which is at my mom's house today. And been listening to his music and love, just the message behind it. I feel like it's so universal. So to have it come this full circle is really cool. To see the development of it, and it's been kind of a part of a natural progression versus something that was orchestrated. So I'm happy about where things are at the moment.
Right. So about how many pieces of Bob have you done, would you say, Mark, in your art career?
I'd say it's 20 plus, fine art pieces. And they kind of evolve over time. So the story goes like this. So my third painting that I ever did was a Bob Marley. When I did the piece, I sent it off to the Bob Marley Facebook page. This is back in 2014. Because even though I did the sip and paint in 2013, at the time I was living in Sierra Leone. So I went back to Sierra Leone, came back, and I was stuck here because of the Ebola outbreak that they had. And that's when I went back and I was like, you know what, let me go pass the time here. And I started going to Michael's and getting some supplies. And that's when I did that Bob Marley piece. And then I decided to send the piece out. That's when, you post your stuff on Facebook and they shared it. So I shared it with the Bob Marley group Facebook page. And they one morning, I completely forgot about it. And one morning, I just saw my page blowing up. So I was like, okay, what's going on? And the piece went viral. It got like something almost 400,000 likes, 30,000 shares, like went proper viral. And that was part of one of the biggest encouragements for me to continue painting. And so from there, I kept doing that, and I decided to just do a massive collection of Bob Marley pieces.
Right.
And that was kind of how that journey began.
Mm-hmm. So, Mark, you're a naturally confident guy. You have this aura about you. But tell me what having that piece go viral meant for your confidence as it related to as an artist.
Well, you start out and you don't know if you're good or not, right? You think you're good, right? You think, oh, I did a great job. You did the best that you could, but
Right.
it's subjective. Your friends are not going to tell you, oh, that sucks. But when you put it into the public domain and then you see it get received a certain way, it definitely reinforce what the person that I spoke with at the Sip and Paint said,
Mm-hmm.
and also just encouraged me to kind of keep doing it because I enjoyed it. It was a great pastime at the time, and I just kind of nourished it. Kept trying new things, looking online. I never had any formal training as an artist, so
Right.
kind of kept crafting my art and figuring out what worked, what didn't work, what I liked, until I figured out what style I wanted to go with.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's so interesting, Mark, that you had no formal training whatsoever, and just to look at your pieces, which are just magnificent. That's really something there. What does it say about you always looking to stretch yourself, grow, and try new things instead of so often, Mark, we get stuck in this 9 to 5 and worrying about our jobs and our careers and our
Mhm.
families and everything, and we get so locked into that that we don't say, hey, maybe I have another talent elsewhere.
That's a very good point, Fabian. So I say try everything, right? At least one time. You don't know what you're good at. If you never try it, you'll never know. And I talk about our education system a lot of times and about how I don't think it prepares us for really enhancing our skills, our natural skills. Because, I'm 46 years old at this point, going on 47. And I'm discovering that I could paint in my mid 30s.
Mm,
There's something that got missed along the way there, where I
right.
should not have discovered that there was this creative aspect of my, being. I did marketing before, and I know how to put colors together and do designs, but from a much more industrial perspective, right? From a
Mm-hmm.
academic or from a marketing skew, not necessarily from an artistic perspective. So what I say is, you just never know. And I definitely have pushed myself. I've done, if I tell people half the time the things I've done, it's kind of crazy, but I believe that when you're here not to fit into the box. You're
Mm-hmm.
here to be the fullness of what you can be, right?
Mm-hmm.
The full limit of everything. Try it, see what works for you, and you never know what you'll fall in love with and
Mm-hmm.
where it will take you.
No doubt, no doubt. And Mark, as far as we're discussing the other day, as far as how recognizable Bob Marley is, and I believe that he is, if not the most recognizable face in the world, he is right there in that conversation. If you could just speak on
You want to be controversial about it, but
that. Why not? Let's go.
I'll say it like this. I think that what I was sharing with you is one of the biggest things that connects people world over is music, right? There's probably nothing else that really brings us together and that we're all able to relate to in a very easy way.
Mm-hmm.
And I can think of no other artist whose work is as relatable, as universally as Bob Marley,
Mm.
right? So if you take music as that thing that connects humanity, and you take Bob Marley as that music genre that has really permeated the entire planet, he definitely by far is one of the most recognizable, but also not only most recognizable, but probably one of the most influential figures to humanity in
Mm-hmm.
general.
Mm-hmm.
Because of you go anywhere in the world and people just don't know Bob Marley or recognize his face. They know a song. They have a favorite song,
Right.
right? You see images of it in countries where they don't even speak English, right? Um, Everywhere the colors, recognizable and are associated with him.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, I think it's a hard argument to say if there's another figure. I know people always bring up Michael Jackson in the same conversation
Mm,
of the
right.
messaging of his music and how much it transcends and connects with human beings and our struggles, that the struggles that we all universally understand. I can't think of another figure in the world that has significant and has made a big impact on just humanity
Right.
through the arts.
And so widely loved. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no polarizing part of Bob Marley, just widely loved and preaching love and unity, and it just really speaks to uh, every country I've been to, and I can imagine that there's somebody either have a Bob Marley poster up or they're wearing a Bob Marley T-shirt.
Yes, yes. I want to bring up a point of that, and I've shared this a few times, but you know, we a lot of times Bob Marley, yes, love and unity was a big part of his message, but when interviewed, his in his own words, Bob Marley said, "I'm a revolutionary,"
Mm-hmm.
in his own words, right? And he was about bringing change, right? Change to the structure of the system of how the world operates and the structures that kind of keep people in oppression, right? And a part of that message sometimes I think gets diluted because it's like the kumbaya side of Bob Marley's message gets put out there, but they ignore the other side of him, which you listen to, songs like War,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you listen to some of the songs like, Redemption Song. Those songs are, yes, they have a message of love and unity there, but it's about a revolution and a change that he was also trying to promote. And I always bring that point up when people say yes, one love and unity. But I also want to say that that is a core aspect of who he was and how he saw himself.
Mm-hmm. No doubt. And Mark, when I think of Bob, I think of Mandela in terms of they got you to listen. They didn't just hit you over the head with the social justice and the civil
Right,
rights and what's going on in the streets with police.
right.
They
Hmm.
had this aura about them. They had this way of communicating that it was easier to listen to them than to just go full fledged in on whatever the topic might be.
Right. Yeah, I think connection, I mean, music, as I said, is that thing, right? If it sounds good, it feels good. I mean, if you watch Bob Marley's performances on stage, it's almost like a spiritual experience, right? It's almost like he wasn't even there when he was performing and he was connected to a bigger, something bigger than himself. I
Hmm.
always say, like, when he puts his hands in the air and he's singing and he has his hand in the air, it's almost like he's connecting to the source and the source is flowing through him, you
Right.
know. So his message, and I don't necessarily think it was just always just about trying to communicate, um, you know, trying to communicate his music and getting his music out there. I think he was genuinely trying to get the message of his music out there.
Hmm.
And I think that's why it connected with so many people because it was bigger. It was about something bigger than himself.
Hmm.
And you felt that, you felt that he genuinely was feeling what he was coming from. And his Rastafarian, influence, and of course, Garveyism and his, belief in all of those things had a big influence on who he was as a person. So it wasn't just like music for him; it was him being him and expressing it through this form, uh,
Hmm.
which is just why it was so real and raw and unapologetic, right, about how he presented himself.
Hmm. No doubt. Well, if you're just joining us here, we're here with Mark Phi, and he is an artivist, and we're going to get into the definition of that, at least what Mark thinks is the definition. And Mark has some great work out there. We're talking about his renditions of Bob Marley. Bob Marley movie opens up nationwide. A lot of build up, a lot of electricity
Hmm.
around this biopic. It starts on February 14th. And what better guest to bring on than Mark, whose pieces are been very instrumental in promoting this movie. So, Mark, I want to ask you: have you learned maybe anything about Bob that you didn't necessarily know before you really got this intense in terms of studying him and doing these other depictions of him?
No, I think apart some of the stories I've heard, like one of the things, one of the interviews that I watched a while back and that I didn't know is that, he got shot, right? So at the studio, Tough Gun Studios, they shot the studio there. And, um, you know, he knew the person who shot at him, right? And the he was like, "No, I'm not gonna police."
Mm.
you know, um, that spoke volumes to me about the
Mm.
kind of person that he was. Um, you know, so some of those things are just kind of like little tidbits that I've learned over the time that speak to the kind of person that he was. And then watching his interviews and listening to him speak about how he sees himself has also given me a lot of insight into um, what was behind his messaging, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of course, Rastafarianism and Garvey and his message, and Haile Selassie and all of those people had a big influence on the songs that he wrote. And of course, you can't talk about, Bob Marley without talking about Peter Tosh and the Wailers,
Right.
because, Peter Tosh, of course, wrote a lot of those songs as well. So it's just, I've learned a lot. There's so much, to be able to talk about it in a single setting. But,
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. So, Mark, if you were sketching Bob right here, right now, he's sitting down there, you're sketching him. Tell me some questions that you would ask of Bob Marley.
Um, you know, um, I'd ask him what he wants his legacy to be. I'd ask him that question. Um, I don't know if he thought about. I know he lived his life, not as much for himself, right? And you could kind of see that. Um, I'd ask him his philosophy on women. I'd ask him about his relationships with women
Right.
and what his philosophy on women was. I would I would ask him about what is his biggest disappointment in his life up to that point. I think he's done so many amazing things, and I think sometimes when you are alive, you don't really realize it.
Right.
Right. So I'd love to be able to just kind of get his perspective on how he saw his life and how he felt about that. So
Yeah.
those are just a few questions I'd ask him.
Yeah. Mark, I would ask him what his biggest challenge was.
Mm.
What
Mm.
his personal biggest challenge was. But it's so fascinating. You know, Mark, when we think of, just his image and the paintings, and we've seen maybe hundreds through our lifetime, all kind of depictions.
Mhm.
Is there one that stood out for you in all your journeys around the world? They said, man, that is it. This is it. Or did they all just kind of were, you know, they were up for debate as far as a favorite?
Um, there's this Brainwash has this piece
Mm-hmm.
of records, Bob Marley records.
Mm-hmm.
He was a part of the Bob Marley One Love Experience with me and a few other artists.
Mm-hmm.
And when I went to the London exhibit with the London, showing, his piece was just amazing. And I think it's one of the most amazing pieces. The other piece that I love is actually one of the pieces I created that's at the museum. And it's where he's like looking at him really intensely.
Mm-hmm.
He's like serious face. And it's still one of my favorite pieces, this all time, pieces. I I think about trying to go back and doing that painting again. I'm like, ugh, you know, would I be able to duplicate it?
Right.
So I haven't touched it again, but yeah, I'd say those are two pieces that I really love. I think that really communicate his message in a very powerful way.
Hmm. Now, Mark, there's so many things so many great attributes that Bob had. But if you had to pick out one as it relates to drawing him, and then we want to talk about the one behind you, what would that be? The one thing that maybe stood out when it comes to drawing him, what would that be?
Um, you know, that's a hard question. Two things come to mind of just of rip, and one is his locks, right,
Hmm.
and the other is his laugh.
Yeah.
Those are two things that when I think about his pieces, yeah, I'd say those are the two things: his laugh and yeah, his laugh and his locks.
Hmm. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the piece behind you, Mark. What's the name of it? If it has a name, and just tell me about that inspiration behind it.
So this is actually Bob Marley, just called Bob Marley.
Okay.
It's so this is actually, remember the piece I mentioned to you earlier that I posted on Facebook years ago.
Yeah.
That was an early rendition of that piece, and this
Okay.
is the same piece, just in my current style with the maturity. And this is going back. I think I finished this piece back in 2020,
Hmm.
um, somewhere around there. But I wanted to revisit that piece. It's actually one of my favorite images of Bob, of him smiling. It's free, it's happy, you know. It's very engaging, kind of draws you in
Right.
painting. Um, so it's definitely one of my favorite images of him, which I'll probably end up doing a few more.
Hmm.
That I like.
Hmm. So, Mark, how did you want to set yourself apart from the how many hundreds or whatever thousands of paintings? I mean, how did you want to kind of put your twist on it?
You know, I'll say it like this. How it kind of happened is, so I I went to the Bob Marley Museum. This is back in 2015. I went down there to renew my passport, and I had a break. And I was like, you know what? I never been to the Bob Marley Museum to do anything, so or see it or check it out.
Mm.
So I went to do a tour, and this is very shortly after I started painting, and went, did the tour, and in the tour, um, at that point, I think I had a collection of maybe 10 or 12 pieces,
Hmm.
right? I just started doing larger pieces as well. And someone just hit me, and I was like, you know what? This is where these pieces belong.
Mm.
And I was like, yeah, this is where these pieces belong. So some time had to pass. I left, went to China, moved to China for 2015. And when I came back, I reached back out to the Bob Marley Museum, and I proposed it to them. I was like, hey, I have a collection of pieces, fine art paintings of Bob Marley, variety of them. And I believe that these paintings, this is where they belong.
Hmm.
So I presented that to them. They looked at it, spoke with the family. They liked it. And in 2017 or 2016, like going to 2017, they opened up the Mark Phi International Room in the Bob Marley Museum. And it was a room dedicated to his 10 fine art paintings of Bob Marley that were, donated. And the pieces were donated to the Bob Marley Foundation, but they are on permanent exhibit at the Bob Marley Museum and are part of the Bob Marley Museum's permanent collection. And so the pieces were used or are being used to generate funds to raise money of the prints of those paintings in their partnership with UNICEF to,
Hmm.
for their child programs, education programs that they have in Jamaica. So that's kind of how that all happened. It wasn't necessarily like, it was definitely a very deliberate act on my part to say I wanted this to happen, and it did. And then later, everything else kind of followed that. But that's kind of how that story goes.
No doubt, that's a great story, and we're going to get into your philanthropy as well, and an artivist. What does that mean to you, Mark? Everybody has their own definition of it, but what does that mean to Mark Phi?
I want to use my art to create impact, and that was a part of my motto at the beginning. And so it was always to use my art to figure out how to use my art to help people. And the reason for that is my mom, when I first started painting, said that this was a gift. You should use this as a gift. You should use it to help people, right? And I decided to use my art as a medium to be able to help others, while of course benefiting from that personally. And so when I first started, I had a marketing company before, and I decided to kind of make a brand around it called Mark Phi Creations. And the brand focus was to partner with charitable organizations and help them to raise money for their charities using art. But it was also a way of putting my art in a different, in different, in different rooms, right? If you sell your art on the side of the street, people pay the side of the street prices. You put your art in places that people pay are able to value and appreciate your work, then they'll pay the prices associated with that. And so I actually executed my model for the first time when I was in Shanghai, and I partnered with this charitable organization called Chunwei. And we did our first auction piece there in Beijing. And the first painting I sold got sold for $12,000. And that was kind of the beginning of the journey of how I was able to use the art. And I started creating merchandising around it and helping charities to be able to generate, thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I've continued to do that, throughout the years, partner with different charities, South Africa, London, here, Jamaica, all over the world. But Artivist for me is new. So the charitable aspect of it was definitely a part of the creative impact piece, but Artivist kind of came in 2020 because all the time from 2000 when I started painting to 2020, I was anonymous. So nobody knew that I was the artist. So I'd be in the room sometimes and the paintings would get sold and nobody would know it was me. And I liked it that way. I still like it that way. But a friend of mine said to me that there's no such thing as a famous secret, right? And so with the whole George Floyd moment, I decided to kind of put my face out there, and I created a docuseries called Conflicted Power to start talking about things that really matter to me, and to use my art as a medium to be able to create impact and change and put a voice behind things and a visual behind things. So that is the artivist side of things. And a friend of mine was like, your work is very artivist like, and I was like, I like that term, I'll use it. So 2020 is when that came up. It's basically an extension of using my art to create impact, but now also be very focused on using my art to be able to speak to things and to uplift the consciousness of people through it. And so the extension of that has turned into some bodies of work that I've created. The Jamaica Heroes Mother project came out of that George Floyd moment, which was an extension of that because of the work I was doing on Marcus Garvey. And so that has continued. So, so here we are.
No, that's great, man. Some great work there. And Mark, where can we find you on social media before we close?
Yeah, you can log on to markphicreations.com. That's MARKPHI creations.com. Or markphi.com, markphi.com. And you can find out about my art, the things I've done, You can also, purchase some of my pieces. Not all my pieces are available for sale online. That's deliberate. Most of my pieces are accessible through private vernissage events, private homes that I do exhibits at. But feel free to reach out to me. My contact details are there. You can send an email to mark@markphicreations.com, and I'll definitely respond. And instructions are there, by the way, if you're interested in commissions.
Yeah. Mark, you said something earlier that really hit home, and I think that's something that young entrepreneurs can use. You said if you sell it on the street side, you're going to get street side prices, but if you try to leverage it and get it into a gallery or something, your chances might be better. And that's something I think that young artists need to hear more.
Yeah, the universe gives you what you ask for. Right? If you ask for $1, it'll give you $1. If you ask for $1 billion, it'll give you $1 billion. So I believe you put yourself in the places that the worst they're gonna say is no. Right. So why not try?
Yeah.
You never know. And art's so subjective. It's like there are pieces that I think are just okay, and people like rave over it. The piece I think that I love, and other people are like, sorry.
Right.
So it's one of those things that you just never know, but you gotta put yourself out there.
Mark, I've stopped trying to figure out art and what has great value, what doesn't. There's no criteria there. I walked into the galleries and I said, well, I'm willing to pay 2 cents for this. And then, it's sold for like $20,000 or something. So just let things go, right? Just let them.
There are some things, there's some humanistic aspects of, I think, art. I think, and just not art, but just things in general. People, if something is easy to access, people don't value it as much. If something is placed in a certain environment, people don't value it as much. There are some very deliberate things that go into value that people consider when they take value into consideration. Uniqueness is also a factor, right? Does it look like everything else? Is it just like everybody else's work? So I think there are some elements that you can control in determining how someone is going to value your work. And I'm very conscious of that. I'm also very conscious of preserving the value of the work that I sell. So if my collectors have paid a certain price for my work, I just can't sell it below a certain price because that's devaluing what someone else has paid for it. I try to preserve it because I want my work to appreciate, or if it's not appreciated, it's at least maintaining its value over time. That's a very conscious decision, behind that.
How about storytelling, Mark, as it relates to art? How do you just view that kind of prism there? Storytelling, is there a more effective way, a less effective way? And as it relates to your pieces and storytelling?
I don't know if there's always a story behind my pieces. Sometimes it's just something I like and I want to paint it,
Right.
The Jamaica Heroes project is probably a story piece, right? That collection of work is definitely a story behind it. There's a purpose behind it. That George Floyd piece was a message. I have other pieces that are controversial that I haven't released those yet, that are definitely messages that you'll see coming out within the next few months. But not every piece is a message. Some pieces are just, hey, I like it. And recently I started to do the pastel and these more geometric shapes, which is experimentation. And the experimentation, like, I started the experimentation not knowing or not having a message there. But then in doing some pastel versions of that, I thought about doing some in more iridescent black based colors or darker shades of iridescent, colors. And that became a message in of itself through the process of creation, not necessarily intentional at the beginning, but in creating it, I saw something, I tried something literally, and I saw it, and it meant something to me. And then I applied that message to it. So that's kind of how that happens. It's not always deliberate. To say that would be disingenuous.
Mm-hmm. You know, Mark, before we go, when you did the George Floyd piece there, right? Uh, I didn't see a lot of Caribbean people doing it. And I think that's what really set it apart. And I was expecting more, to be honest. So when you did it, I was like, wow, like finally, you know what I mean? I don't know if that caught you by surprise as well, but I thought that there'd be more representation from the Caribbean as documenting what happened there.
Yeah, I didn't do it from that perspective, to be honest, Fabian. Because one of the things I have not done um, is I have not pigeonholed myself as I'm a Jamaican artist or I'm a black artist or an artist in Florida. I'm an artist, right? And I didn't even for a long time saying those words. A word it was hard for me to even put it out there to say.
Right.
I used to say I paint, right? I paint, and that was where it stopped. But the message there wasn't necessary. It was just it hit me. That was very personal. That piece, that's probably one of the hardest pieces I've done.
Really?
Yeah, hands down. You know, because if you look at the piece, I'm literally saying his last words. Right. The name of the painting is called 46 Please. So I'm literally, if you watch the video, of course, and you hear what he's saying, and then I'm taking each of those letters and I'm painting those letters and placing them on the canvas one at a time, like through the whole process and saying exactly what he's saying. It was a really tough piece to do because it was like almost reliving it over and over and over again. I had to read his words over and over and over again. So it wasn't from a Caribbean perspective. It was just me wanting to do something about that moment. And I didn't know what to do. I felt helpless. I felt like, you know, what the hell, man? Like, you know, my daughter, I thought about her, you know, in the future, what that's going to look like. This is not the world I want her to be growing up with, you know, always conscious about her skin and, you know, yeah. So that's where that came from.
Yeah, man. Real brilliant, real brilliant. Mark, before we go, I would like for you to give us something to our young artists out there, just a word of encouragement or whatever you'd like to say, my man.
Oh, you know, I'd say keep experimenting, you know, keep pushing the boundaries. I mean, art right now is so, with technology where it is, oh my gosh, there's so much more. You
Right.
know, I think I've been thinking about this a lot. For so long, art has been considered this very two-dimensional thing, like this, right? Or sculptures, right? But in the age of the digital world that we live in, and you know, my background is IT. I have an IT company that focuses on AI and all that other stuff. But this technological advancement that we're having and the change that's happening so rapidly is opening up a whole new world that's making it so much more accessible for anybody to be an artist and a creator. And I think that the definition of artist has to be a little bit broader than just people who create visual art or or sing or dance, but it's the coder, right, who comes up with a really creative way of doing something that nobody's ever thought about before, that generates something that creates an experience that connects with us in a way that's very humanistic. So I'd say for anybody out there, man, just experiment and exercise that creativity. You may not necessarily be a painter, but try something that you think you love to do. It might be crocheting, might be fashion design, it might be whatever it is. Experiment with it, because I think it's an outlet that gives you an opportunity to express who you are.
All right, some good. That's the word right there. Mark, thank you so much. Congratulations on all your work, and I know you're looking forward to the movie that's coming out on Wednesday.
Yeah,
and that really must feel special for you that you were a part of that.
very small,
Still.
insignificant. All I gotta say to people is go make sure you watch the movie. go buy a ticket, go watch it in the theaters, bring your family. You know, it's Valentine's Day. The movie is called One Love. How much more appropriate could it be? I'm bringing my daughter with me. So, you know, go check it out and enjoy it.
Yeah, man. Well,
Yeah.
Mark, best of luck with everything, man, and God bless, man.
All right. Thank you, Fabian.
Yeah, man. One love. One love. All right.